Okay, hello again. Well, I've had a few requests, and some of them are actually surprisingly anatomically possible. So I thought, okay, well, any anatomically possible requests will be considered. Now, I wasn't going to do a video on this latest Apollo Defectives thing by Emlyn-Jones and the usual bunch of cronies that know absolutely nothing whatsoever about the technology involved and have zero photographic analysis ability. But I thought, well, let's just have a look. There's probably some people out there that are expecting me to do something on this and would like me to do something on this, even if they can just say, "Hey, mumbling, it's rubbish." All right, well, let's have a little look at the Apollo Detectives, 50 Years on the Moon. Now, the title itself suggests that Ben believes the moon landing was real, doesn't it? 50 Years on the Moon. The Apollo Detectives, 50 Years on the Moon. Interesting title. Ben? Is your subconscious talking to us again, perhaps?
Now, Neil, sorry about that. Neil Geddes-Ward is he's not only the producer but the editor of this particular video. This particular Apollo Detective needed an awful lot of careful editing.
Yes, I'm sure it did. And that's probably because you know that there's going to be someone out there hanging on your every syllable. And we'll be stomping up and down on every... on everything you get wrong, which is everything, in fact. Well, we'll see. Anyway, we'll have a look at this. I don't know whether I can stomach 3 hours of it, but we'll flick through it and have a look and see what we can find. But that's why there would have been some careful editing. They'd have been very mindful that a lot of what they've said in the past has been rubbished by myself and others. Now, they never ever address the points that were made. They never say, yeah, okay, we were wrong about that. The lunar module did have plenty of power to get a television signal back to the Earth. Yeah, ham radio operators don't just operate on long wave. Yeah, Mr. Allen. All the stuff they get wrong. Oh, and it wasn't a flag that was reflected in the window, and the flag wasn't wet, and the lunar rover didn't actually have the same fender damage on each image. No, that was all rubbish. Yes, they don't actually make a video to address all the things they got wrong in the past. Although, to give credit where credit due where credit is due, Ben did agree with me that the reflection of the flag in the lunar module window was in fact no such thing. It was actually the graticule. He also agreed with me that the flag wasn't wet. And he also agreed with me that the lunar rovers did not all have identical fender damage. Okay, well, let's just move on a bit.
And it took Neil a long time to do it. Neil did this in his own time. He didn't work on this full time, and he had other things to do, wedding videos and had birthday videos and things like that. He does all kinds of filming projects, Neil. He's very, very busy with things like that. So he just did it as soon as he could, and eventually he just said, "Oh, look, I'll do it as quickly as he could," and he did. And so better late than never, as they say. But he's very sorry about that. But it did need a lot of careful editing. But I think it is a better.
So you've said, Ben. I don't think anybody was particularly hanging on by their fingernails waiting for this this production. So. Yeah, I don't think all this apologising is necessary, to be perfectly honest. I think maybe they intended to get it out on the anniversary on the 20th, but maybe that's what he's got on his mind. And of course, if that was their intention, then it's a tad late. Okay, we get it, Ben. You're sorry about that. Let's move on, shall we?
It's a quality video as a result of that. I hope you'll agree. So what's it about? Well, it's not a repeat of what you heard before. You'd be glad to know. So.
Okay, it's not a repeat of what we've heard before. So So they've actually taken on board the fact that they know absolutely nothing whatsoever about the technology of the mission. They're not going to be talking about the lunar module not having enough power. or you know, the transmission power required from the moon back to the Earth, Mr. Allen? They're going to be talking about something else. Now, whatever they're going to be talking about, of course, will be rubbish. These people are clueless. But, you know, we'll have a bit of a giggle and see what they've come up with this time.
This is new information in this video. We are discussing new subjects. We do give a little brief introduction for people who are new to it, of course, and these videos are designed to be self-contained. But so we go into new areas. We talk a little bit about how spacesuits work and things like this, which we didn't cover before.
Now, Ben, of course, is a self-employed gardener, so he knows all about spacesuits and how they work. So does Marcus Allen, of course, the failed photographer and failed car salesman.
And the strange case of some rather odd moon rocks, because some of the astronauts who went to the moon, apparently, they picked up some rocks, brought them back, and when they were scientifically analysed, they found they came from Earth.
Okay, now I haven't checked this to see if it's true, because Ben is prone to, you know, gross exaggeration and making stuff up, complete fabrication, in fact. Good example of that is he was talking about the Rua supposed ET or claimed ET event in Zimbabwe with some school kids, where he said 150 school kids with aliens running around and talking to the children, and of course none of that is true. There was no aliens talking to the children, and there was less than half of the amount of children that he claimed were actually sort of involved or actually witnessed the incident in quote marks. But no one saw anything flying around or landing. All they saw was something between the trees and one or two aliens standing or walking slowly in the shrubbery. So, you know. Okay, so now if NASA had faked the moon landings, they're not they're going to make damn sure that any rocks they give to anybody or present to anybody are going to be moon rocks that would have been recovered by robotic craft or whatever. You know, they're not they're not going to try faking the Apollo moon landings and then hand out ordinary Earth rocks to people and say, okay, there you go, there's a moon rock. Because they're going to know that as soon as it's analysed, they're going to say, well, actually, this doesn't come from the moon. So, you know, is this true? I don't think so. If it is true, what explanation may there be? Well, probably the most likely explanation for that would be that moon rocks are very valuable. You can sell them for $500,000, you know, $1 million, some of them. They're very, very valuable. And probably, I think it's more likely that someone at NASA would have taken a moon rock home with a view to selling it and substituted it with a rock from their garden or a rock from out in the bush. I think that's if this is true, and some of the moon rocks have been found not to be moon rocks, that would be the most likely explanation. Think about it. If you were NASA, you were going to fake this. You're not going to give Earth rocks to people and say these are moon rocks. Not to people that can analyse them. It makes no sense whatsoever. Okay, so let's move on.
Just imagine that. You go all the way to the moon. There's rocks everywhere. Oh, it is a good one. Pick that one up. Take it back. And by a trillion to one chance, you happen to pick up a rock that bloody blasted up here from the Earth. From a meteor strike millions of years ago. I mean, oh my God, how unlucky can you get? And things like that. We also going to talk about various letters that were actually printed on the moon and franked. They were
yeah, again, I haven't heard of this, so I'll check this out. Franked letters on the moon. Again, you know, this is Jones going off on another flight of fancy, as he's prone to doing. Or is this actual fact? So, yeah, I'll check that out.
Stamps put them on the moon, which is very, very strange. There's all kinds of odd things, you know, film in the moon, things like that. all kinds of other things related, which we may not have covered before. Also, we got a new guest, Trevor Weaver.
Never heard of him.
Trevor Weaver, he's not been on before, he's on for the first time, and he's just written a new book.
Okay, he's on there and he's peddling his new book. And if it's about NASA faking the moon landings, save your money. It will be a rubbish.
And we're going to be discussing his book. And the book was launched. It was actually first published.
Well, this may be a bit of fun after all.
On, guess which day? 20th of July. Yes, on Apollo 11 50 day itself.
On Apollo 11 50 day itself. Is that English? I think what Ben is grasping for here is the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. Apollo 50 day, what was that? Gibberish?
So
I won't play it again.
And of course that's the perfect time to launch a book like that, because the book is very similar to others you might have read, like...
Well, actually, he should have launched the book on the 16th of July, shouldn't he? When they actually launched Apollo 11.
The Marcus, like David Percy, Mary Bennett's Dark Moon, which actually questions the official story of the Apollo moon landings. So it's like a continuation of that, new evidence. Also, lots of new evidence.
New evidence. I've never seen any evidence whatsoever of a fake moon mission on any of these Ben Emlyn-Jones, Neil Peel, Apollo defective videos. It's all rubbish from start to finish.
And we also have, of course, Neil Gettysward himself appears in the video, and his trusty co-host Andrew Chaplin of the Paranormal Peep Show. There's a link to that in the description box as well. There's even a couple of shows which I'm on, which is really, really good. And we also have the welcome return of some old faithfuls, which we have been on. I think they've been on all of them. Yeah, they've been on all the Apollo Detectives films so far. And that is Marcus Allen.
Marcus Allen, of course, famous for not being able to lie straight in bed.
Yes, good old Marcus Allen. He's the UK publisher of Nexus magazine, and I do recommend reading that.
Yes, it will. They do actually show the latest cover of the cover of the latest Nexus magazine, and they're saying the UFO leak of the century. They've got a grey alien on there, and of course there is no UFO leak of the century. That is the best they can do for a lead story to draw you in to buy the magazine. If you look at the rest of the stuff on the front cover, it's all rubbish. And of course the UFO leak of the century is no such thing. I did a video on that a little while ago, this so-called UFO leak of the century. It's rubbish.
You're a regular subscriber. I never miss an issue. It's really, really good. If you like the kind of things you see on Panmo TV, you will love Nexus magazine.
Yeah, if you're extremely gullible, you probably do enjoy the Ben videos, and you probably enjoy Nexus magazine, but you have to be gullible enough to believe that the British royal family are in fact lizards from outer space. Ben, I'll show a clip actually of Ben talking about that, but Ben seriously believes that the British royal family, the Queen and Prince Philip, are shape-shifting lizards from outer space. Now, how gullible would somebody have to be to believe that? Sort of person will be gullible enough to believe, well, I don't know, NASA faked the moon landings. Might be gullible enough to believe that free energy is real, that John Hutchison is not a psychotic lunatic that talks absolute rubbish and plays with a lot of old junk for effect.
It's just perfect. It's just exactly like that. And all the way from Australia, we have Jarrah White. Now, he's actually a qualified.
Yeah, he's the guy that looks a little manic as he's telling everybody that he travels to university on the luggage rack of the train. And he did some calculations relating to a naked astronaut travelling in a straight line through the most energetic parts of the Van Allen belts. Always good for a laugh, is Mr. White. Now, of course, people like Ben, self-employed gardener, Marcus Allen, failed photographer, failed car salesman, know all about radiation. And the Van Allen radiation belts, I know far more about it than Dr. Van Allen, who the belts are actually named after.
He's qualified now in various things, such as geology and a couple of other things.
And Dr. Van Allen, of course, says, well, it's a very small risk. Compared with the other risks they take in the missions, it's a very small risk. But these guys do not believe that, because they know far more about the Van Allen radiation belts than Professor Van Allen.
So he's actually within the academic sphere, which is something he's been working on for a long, long time. So he's been doing his YouTube channel, and now he's actually in the academic sphere as well. And he runs the Moon Faker YouTube channel, where he makes some really excellent videos. Again, completely
The moon faking idiot.
original research on the moon landing issue. And so we're very, very glad to have him on here. He provided some very useful information with enormous detail, using all the scientific details that perhaps...
I've seen some of Mr. White's scientific details, and they are really quite good for a laugh.
The other guests and presenters could not have done. So it's really nice to have Jarrah on as well, so that's really, really good. Now, where we're going to go from here, I don't know. But after you watch this particular video, you may want to see some more. Do remember there are links.
You probably have to wring out your underpants, because I suspect this is going to be really quite funny.
In the description box to the previous Apollo Detectives videos, well, there's the previous one, and then you can go to the link in the description box and the previous one to the previous one to that. Because this is like the fourth one we've done. So do check those out. And of course, they are, of course, all on Neil Geddes Ward's.
And they're all absolute bloody rubbish.
YouTube channel, Neil Peel. You'll be glad to know that there may well be another Apollo Detectives video after that, because...
Oh, whoopee! I can hardly wait.
There's some
It should
information
do well for the global sales of popcorn, I would imagine.
that has come my way, which I can't share with you right now, yes.
He's got some information that he can't share with us right now. It's come his way, good heavens. Now, if this information is relating to NASA faking the moon landings, of course it's going to be absolute bloody rubbish.
I know something you don't know. Yeah, but it won't be for long, because if this turns out to be legitimate, we may have to get together for another head-to-head and talk some more about the moon landings with some brand new information and possibly a brand new guest. Anyway, that's to come in the next few months. In the meantime, please do enjoy this latest Apollo Detectives video. I'm sure you will. Thank you for watching Panelist TV, Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order.
Just on that note, I'm not aware of any New World Order, personally. I wonder if you are. Perhaps you could leave a comment below. And, of course, Ben is an ex-hospital porter, so it should be ex-hospital porter, singular, against the New World Order. I don't think he's got any other members of this venerable organisation.
This is, when I say investigate, we're going to look at it from an alternative position of question.
Yeah, from a position of we have absolutely no idea about anything we're looking at, and we're going to give random layman opinions on stuff that we have absolutely zero understanding of.
What really happened on that fateful mission, and indeed series of missions. This is...
Fateful missions? No, I don't think so. I'll have to look up the definition of fateful. But if you send a squadron of warplanes off on a mission, and none of them come back, they'll get shot to pieces. That was that fateful mission of, Squadron 207. If they all go and come back, it's not a fateful mission, is it? I'll have to look that up. Fateful. I don't think that's the right word, Ben.
It's indeed a very, very auspicious time, because it's actually, we're coming up to the 50th anniversary of the supposed first moon landing, that is Apollo 11, a NASA mission which allegedly landed 2 men on the moon and returned them safely to Earth. That's what we've been told, but is it true? Now, several viewers have
Well, the overwhelming evidence would suggest that it certainly is true.
said as a criticism of the previous videos we did that we all agree too much. Well, actually, we don't agree on everything. In fact, we have had some disagreements.
Okay, well, let's... well, if anyone has watched this video, perhaps you can let me know how often they disagree. I haven't watched it yet, so I'll see if I can find any disagreements.
The course of this programme. But what they mean is, why won't someone who actually will defend NASA come onto the show and debate with us? Well, this is not our choice. We have asked almost everyone we can think of to come on the show and do exactly that, and they have not done so. They have declined to actually engage with us in this.
That is a blatant lie. He hasn't asked me to go on there, and he makes up a really feeble excuse about that. But the real reason, I think we all know, anyone with a shoe size with an IQ bigger than their shoe size will know that the reason they don't invite me or anybody else on there is that their ridiculous arguments, and that's what they are, will be completely destroyed within minutes. That's why they don't want anybody interfering. No one. This is just a bunch of backslapping half-wits getting together and giving a bunch of layman's opinions on stuff they have zero understanding of, and they won't have anybody on there that can provide any counter arguments to what they're saying. They just know they'll get torn to pieces.
This programme, which is a shame because it's our intention to be civil and rational towards anyone who believes they can come on and disagree with us, give us a different alternative view, saying that NASA are not lying. But anyway, for those of you...
NASA are not lying, Ben. NASA are not lying, Ben. NASA are not lying, Ben.
Not watched before, you're familiar with the format. This is a roundtable discussion. We have back some old friends and a new face as well. So let's begin with our new friend, our new guest. It is Trevor Weaver. Hello, Trevor.
Hi there.
Welcome to Apollo Detectives.
Yes, thank you. Nice to be here.
Now, tell us a little bit about your book that you've written, because we have discussed it on the programme before.
He's written a book about the moon landings being faked. This guy, Trevor Weaver, never heard of him. Looking at this guy, he's probably old enough to be writing books about the Wright brothers faking the first flight of a heavier-than-air machine. I wonder if he's actually done that. Perhaps he did that a very long time ago. It's all fake, the Wright brothers. They never had a flying machine. It was just a lawnmower. A couple of deck chairs. It was filmed for effect. All right, well, let's before we actually get into this Apollo Defectives 4 analysis, let's just have a look at let's just have a look at the gullibility of Ben Emlyn-Jones, and he can tell us the real reason that he's into all this alien ET stuff, and we can have a look at one or two of the other panelists, and you can then decide whether you want to watch the rest of the video. You can also decide how much credibility you should give to these, be giving to these people. And I'll just remind you again, Ben Emlyn-Jones seriously believes that the Queen of England and Prince Philip are shape-shifting lizards from outer space. Okay, on to a quick look at some of the panelists. Okay, let's start our look at the panel with Ben Emlyn-Jones. He's looking much younger here, of course, but unmistakable. He's wearing his Space Above and Beyond t-shirt there. And Ben's going to tell us the real reason why he loves all this UFO, alien, ET stuff, why he's so interested in it, why he so desperately wants it to be true. Now, the reason Ben gives is a common one, I suspect, among... sorry. Among conspiracy theorists. There are a couple that certainly spring to mind. But let's hear what Ben has to say.
I want to be abducted by aliens.
Why?
I just want to be taken away to some place where I don't have to worry about finding a job. I want to be abducted by aliens.
Why?
I just want to be taken away to some place where I don't have to worry about finding a job.
Yeah, okay. It's so good that I'm going to let that. I'm going to let the fact that ran twice. I'm gonna leave that on there, I think. Okay, so that's let's just have another look at Ben Emlyn-Jones. Okay, so I would be asking, you know, how gullible does somebody have to be to believe the royal family are lizards from outer space? Now, this is a belief of Ben Emlyn-Jones, one of these esteemed panelists. These luminaries. So let's just get a bit of an insight into the gullibility of Mr. Jones.
Things like that. We're not very good if we fall off somewhere high. Things like that. Cats, of course, you throw a cat off somewhere high, it'll just land on its feet.
Well, I'll have to take your word for that one, Ben. I don't go around throwing cats off of high buildings.
So you could have shapeshifted into a reptilian.
Now, he's talking about Prince Philip here. He did a video called Crash of the Lizard Prince when Philip had his car accident. And now he's saying he must have shape-shifted back into human form, you know, when the emergency people arrived.
In form. Now, I want to point out something to you, because some of you are going to be laughing your heads off at this point. This is not a comedy video. If you want to laugh, laugh. But I am saying what I do in all seriousness. I will provide links for you for any...
Yeah, the royal family are lizards from outer space, and NASA never landed Apollo missions on the moon.
Background I have into the reptilians.
I wonder if that baseball hat's lined with tinfoil.
In the description box.
Yeah, I think it should be.
Which you can go and have a look at. But I do take this extremely seriously. And I've looked at the evidence, and I know a lot.
Now, if you looked up the word gormless in a dictionary, I strongly suspect you would see this image. Gormless.
A lot of people in the truth movement don't agree with me on this, but I do think that there is a reality behind this. Indeed, look at I appeared at the RepCon. I mean, unfortunately, the videos aren't available anymore. But
Yeah, the con part of it is accurate. Anyway,
I did actually MC the RepCon conference with Ellis Taylor and several other people. There was Frank Willis there. There was a couple of other guys. Simon Parks, New Zealand. Yeah, there's four of us. Ellis Taylor, Frank Willis, Simon Parks. Who's the fourth one?
yeah. Well, I think that will do anyway. But it sort of gives you an idea of you know, how gullible Ben Emlyn-Jones is, how much credibility you should give anything he says. You know, so you know, he was talking about. I posted a link to Carlin Nipshin, you know, John Hutchison. As alter ego, and Ben Emlyn-Jones will said, yeah, just because he prances around in a frock, takes antipsychotic medication, he takes Thorazine, you know, it doesn't mean what he says about his free energy machine is not true. And I think it would have to be somebody as gullible as Ben Emlyn-Jones, you know, someone gullible enough to believe that the British royal family are lizards from outer space, to believe that John Hutchison's effect or free energy device are anything but the ramblings of a psychotic lunatic. All right, well let's take a look at another member of the panel. Okay, here we have one of our favourite Piffle peddlers, Marcus Allen, and this will give you some idea how gullible Marcus Allen is.
I believe in three things: Father Christmas, the Tooth Fairy, and the Easter Bunny.
Father Christmas, the Tooth Fairy, and the Easter Bunny. So Marcus Allen there telling us all that he believes in Father Christmas, the Tooth Fairy, and the Easter Bunny. That's Okay, I can see why he would get on well with Ben Emlyn-Jones. Now, let's just see another clip from Marcus. It's my favourite clip, actually. Marcus telling us all about von Braun and co. being the Germans that got America to the moon. Okay, so let's. This is my favourite clip of Marcus Allen, showing us all quite clearly that he knows very well the NASA moon missions were all real.
They were Nazis. Werner von Braun was a major in the SS. Hermann Oberth was a senior scientist. They were all Germans who got America to the moon. They were all Nazi Germans, that's what happened.
They were all, von Braun and co. were all the Germans that got America to the moon. So why do you keep saying that it never happened and they never went to the moon, Mr. Allen? Now, I wouldn't blame you, actually, if you just press stop now, because you don't really need to watch any more of this video, do you? I mean, Marcus Allen has just said von Braun and co. were the Germans that got America to the moon. He knows very well they went to the moon. So anything he has to say about them not going to the moon, or faking the moon missions, beyond this point, is completely contrary to what he's just said, isn't it? If he knows they went, why would he continue to say they didn't go? Anyway, well, if I can find a clip of Jarrah White saying he's just travelled to uni on a luggage rack, I'll include it. If I can't, then we'll get on with the video. But just bear that in mind. You know, there's Marcus Allen, and he's just told us all that von Braun and co. were the Germans that got America to the moon. Now, from this point, he'll be saying they never went to the moon. It's all a lie. I think it clearly shows that he knows very well that the NASA moon missions are all real. They all went to the moon. And the comments, the following comments with regard to the moon mission being faked are all to do with selling his ridiculous Nexus magazine that spruiks these stupid alternative stories, you know. It's all rubbish. Okay, well, as I said, let's see if we can find the clip of Jarrah White. If not, then on with the video. Okay, now here is Jarrah White. He's got the mad staring eyes. Looks a tad unbalanced. He's going to tell us about his journey to uni, I think.
Impossible. On top of that, the buses are just so full of people. I had to ride in the bloody buggy, in the luggage rack things on the way over here.
Right, well, I had a very quick Google, and apparently there is something to this franking business. They Apollo 15, the astronauts took some envelopes to the moon, and they franked them on the moon, and they franked them when they got back to Florida. Because they wanted to make a few quid on the side. But in order to do that, of course, they would have had to take the envelopes to the moon. Now, with regard the rocks, I haven't actually Googled that, but you see, Ben makes these statements, and you know, he's prone, as I've said before, to gross exaggeration and blatant lies. So you have to be a little bit careful with what he says. Now, he said that you know, the rocks returned or given to for people to analyse were actually Earth rocks. I haven't Googled that, but he didn't leave any links, you know, didn't leave any references to this information. It's just something off the top of his head. So, you know, if you're going to do this sort of thing, guys, and you're going to make these sort of statements, offer some evidence. You know, offer just a link, just a reference, more if you've got them. But to make a statement like that and then just move on to franking, I mean, this is just very, very poorly done. This is after extensive editing, so goodness knows what this video was like before. But I haven't seen very much of it, but what I've seen so far is pretty poor. Now here's Ben, and he's going to make an interesting comment here, or at least his subconscious is.
That book that you've just seen there is completely impartial. I don't have a view in the book. I just look at the evidence for and against. But as a result of that, of course, I realised that it didn't go. And that's what
Someone else that doesn't know what he's looking at, obviously.
the new book is about, which is this one. This is just a mock of the book.
That's a new one that's coming out soon.
That's coming out 20th of July.
Yeah. And that's the date of the landings. That's a very, very good date indeed.
Yes. Yes, thanks, Ben. That's the date of the landing. So it's a very, very good date indeed, says Mr. Jones. So there's Ben Jones again, his subconscious telling us that he knows it all happened, because he knows that July the 20th was the date of the landing. Thanks, Ben. Next. Well, I did a bit of Googling, and apparently there is something to this franking on the moon business. And yes, I did say franking. It was Apollo 15, and the astronauts decided to make a few quid on the side by taking some envelopes to the moon, franking them on the moon, and then franking them when they got back, and then selling them. But of course, in order to do that, they would have to take the envelopes to the moon. So, I mean, Ben makes these statements. It'd be good if he left some links and references, and same with the Earth rocks, you know. Oh, they weren't moon rocks, they were from Earth. Leaves no links, no references. I haven't seen very much of this video, but what I've seen so far is extremely poor. If this is the best they can do after a lot of extensive editing, I think they're wasting their time. And even worse, they're wasting mine and yours. But anyway, this is Marcus Allen. He's going to tell us that he went along to see the Apollo 11 IMAX movie, and he was unimpressed. First of all, he starts off having a dig at IMAX. Goodness knows why. I've seen some IMAX stuff, and it's been very, very good indeed. I haven't seen the Apollo 11 movie. It was being shown in Australia, but not locally to me. I've been pretty busy, and I didn't feel inclined to travel to see it. I'll buy the DVD or watch it when it gets on TV. But anyway, Marcus Allen is just going to comment on something that he thought deserves a comment.
Which is supposed to be this great immersive experience. And suddenly there was very loud sound, and the film was very well produced. It was good Hollywood production, you know, quick editing, lots of useful captions on it telling you how fast the craft was going, and very, very crude and not very representative illustrations of the lunar module landing on the moon. I mean, not landing on the moon, because obviously that wasn't shown, but they were just showing how it supposedly happened. Now, there were various points I looked out for, and ironically, the very first word that appeared in the film after the certificate, which appears in at the beginning of most films,
obviously, he doesn't see many films, does he? When was the last time you saw a certificate at the beginning of a film? Certificate of certification.
The first word that appeared on the Apollo 11 documentary, they called it, was the word believe.
I see.
Now, I've seen They Live, and if you've seen the film, John Carpenter's film They Live from
excellent film.
20 years ago, you'll understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah, now he likes to create a little bit of intrigue, does Marcus. You know, he's talking about he's comparing a word used in the Apollo 11 documentary with a word used in a fiction film by John Carpenter. This is typical of the sort of thing Alan does. He likes to generate a little bit of intrigue. What's the context of the word believe? You know, was that a comment from a reviewer? Was it a comment from NASA? We don't know. What's the context of the word? I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on that. I've done a bit of a Google, and I've seen the certificate. I haven't seen the word believe after it. So yeah, I'm not quite sure. I know what he's trying to do here. He's trying to say they're trying to brainwash you into believing that it's all real. Completely unnecessary, of course, because it is all real. But just as an example, Marcus Allen was on Dreaming Saucers, and he showed a picture of a Gemini space capsule bobbing around in the ocean with an extended antenna. And he said, wouldn't this antenna have got burnt off? So I thought, okay, so Gemini's fake now as well, is it? And he said it's an anomaly. Supposedly there's an explanation for this, but it's an anomaly. Now, he doesn't give what the explanation is, because if he did, it would kill the intrigue. It would show clearly that it's not an anomaly, and the explanation is that the antenna was deployed after the capsule re-entered, so it wouldn't have got burnt off. But he likes to twist things, Marcus Allen. He likes to twist things in the direction of the narrative he wants to put forward, to try and create a bit of intrigue, to try and find something that would support his ridiculous narrative, and that's what it is. It's ridiculous. So yeah, this is pointless, really. Gibberish. Next. Right, I should have let that run on a bit. This is quite amusing.
The actor.
Marcus Allen's talking about a photograph that was shown in the documentary, or a scene that was shown in the documentary of the Earth that was taken from 130,000 miles away.
Commentary at the time. And if I hadn't known better, I'd have said it was Bart's film, What Happened on the Moon. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon, because they were showing exactly the same shot of the Earth, supposedly 130,000 miles out. It's as if they hadn't been watching some of the descriptions that were being shown by Bart in his 2000 film.
I think that's funny. Marcus Allen seriously believes that NASA would be watching anything that Bart Sibrel puts out about fake moon missions. I think that's hilarious. That NASA, he really believes that NASA would look at a film put out by Bart Sibrel. I think maybe these guys are delusional. You know, Marcus Allen probably believes he has credibility. That NASA look at his stuff and feel obliged to comment on it, or respond to it, or that NASA feel watch Bart Sibrel's bloody rubbish and feel that they feel they should respond to it. NASA doesn't give a damn about these people. They're delusional idiots. They know nothing about it. And they're sitting there thinking that NASA's hanging on their every word, thinking, oh no, what are we going to do now? Look what Marcus Allen has said about this mission. Or look what Bart Sibrel is saying about us. You know, they're clueless, these people. NASA probably doesn't know these guys exist. And if they do, I'd be very surprised if they'd actually watch their stuff. Well, they might have a quick look lunchtime, you know, while they're having a cup of coffee, just for a laugh. But NASA's not going to be keeping an eye on Marcus Allen, or Ben Jones, or Bart Sibrel, or any of these fake moon landing nutters. It's ridiculous. Next clip. Okay, now they're talking about this chap that bought some reels of tape from NASA. He was going to sell them to television production companies to make documentaries about Apollo. He saw that 3 were marked Apollo 11, so he sat on them. Okay, he kept them until now. 50th anniversary, he's got them up for sale. And we're going to see what the guys have to say about that.
These are not all of them are necessarily Apollo footage. Some may have been from the shuttle. Some.
See how this bears any relevance whatsoever to NASA faking the moon landing. I don't quite understand, you know. So this guy's got some tapes. He's nothing to do with NASA. If he chooses to hang on to them for a while, so what?
Really not shuttles that wouldn't in the 70s. So some might have been from Skylab or from ASDP or who knows. But basically, he was selling them off at about $50 a piece to various production companies. You know, the tape was expensive in those days. People would just report over them and everything. But apparently, when he realised...
So he was selling them so they could use them to record over, not to make documentaries. Okay. $50 a pop. Again, so what?
3 of them were from Apollo 11. He hung on to them because he figured they might have some monetary value. Then,
Yeah, I would have done the same.
obviously they were, because now he's going to be auctioning them for about $1 million or so.
I'm surprised he's the only one who thought of that. I mean,
Perhaps he wasn't. What evidence do you have that this chap was the only one that thought of that, Ben? Links, references?
this is very odd. I mean, Trevor, what do you think about? Trevor, hello. What do you think about this? Have you heard about this story?
Yes, I read it from Gary's email today. I mean, it was
Gary's email. Is that the UFO magazine guy?
1976 that he bought them. It's a very strange story that he would particularly hold on to those 3 boxes and presumably sell the rest of them. I just find it very strange.
But completely irrelevant. So what?
Yeah.
You see,
This is not evidence that NASA faked the moon landing, is it?
you see where I'm pointing on the screen? You can see this says the VR2000 and 15 inches per second. Well, obviously this is a 2-inch tape as well. That's not what they use for recording the unfiltered footage. Here it says the unconverted Apollo slow scan television signals. Here we go. Ampex FR 1400, 120 frames inches per second. So yeah,
So this-
that leads me to suspect it's second generation, not the unfiltered stuff that they're talking about.
Right. So, well, obviously, if he's selling this stuff under false pretenses, that's.
I don't think he's selling under false pretenses. He probably just is misinformed.
No, I think he knows that it's second generation, and that's why he hung on to it for so long. When he initially found out that it wasn't an original 120 inch per second, whatever it was, recording, I think he probably thought that there wasn't very much value in them, and he's just sort of hung on to them now. 50 years on, is anyone going to check this? He's selling them as the original thing for $1 million. And yeah, I don't think he's ill-informed. I think he realised that they weren't worth very much money. That's why he just hung on to them, and they just weren't worth selling. And he thought, well, I'll hang on to them, and they may be worth a few quid. In a few years' time. I think it's as simple as that. All right. Well, let's see. Let's move on to the next clip. Yes, I should have let that run on a bit because this is quite amusing, I think.
Can you see me, guys? Because I can't. Is my camera working? Can you see me?
We can see Ben's icon.
Right. Okay.
Well, we can't see Ben's face, but of course in this setting it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. If I do often videos and I'll just have my icon up there and I talk. I rarely have the camera on myself. Ben loves to get his face on your screen when he's doing his response videos. He doesn't have his icon, avatar, whatever you want to call it there. The camera is on him. He loves to get his face on the screen. He laps up this micro fame, and he'll spruik any old rubbish to stay on your screen. Some do it for money. Don't quite know what this guy's agenda is. Maybe he's just a nutcase. But anyway, let's continue.
I can't see you, Ben. I can only see your icon.
Right. There we go.
Thanks.
I think I stopped screen now.
Why my camera on all the time?
I was going to mention, I forgot to.
All right. No worries. So you can. Well, I'm here now.
Yeah, he's happy now. He's lapping up that microphone. Now that handsome George Clooney-esque face is on your screen.
Yeah. So this is one of the many strange things to do. These strange anomalies that seem to appear when you think, well, if what NASA are saying are true, things would have been different.
No, not at all. This guy's completely independent of NASA, isn't he? This is the sort of just rubbish. It's meaningless.
This is one of many of those. And
No. This has got nothing whatsoever to do with NASA faking the moon landings. A guy selling some tapes. So what? It's got nothing to do with NASA, is it?
And of course, at the moment, NASA are going to try to put in kind of pseudo explanations for these things. And it's possible this news story is one of those.
Because people look at this and I think, well, come on, they're selling tapes. It's in a sense, this is like a solid thing which attaches value.
I don't think NASA know or care that the guy is selling tapes. This is irrelevant, completely irrelevant. This is clutching at straws.
A very valuable sort of thing that's selling for a lot of money, which is connected to this historical event. I mean,
connected. This is these tapes are connected to this historical event. Again, there's Ben telling us that his subconscious knows that it really happened. All right, next clip. Okay, just skipped over a bit there where Marcus Allen was saying it's all nonsense, and the film and the camera would have evaporated, and in the vacuum, without having pressurized cameras, etc. Fails to take into account, of course, that NASA got Eastman Kodak to make a special film. They didn't just go down the chemist and buy a roll of film over the counter, as Marcus Allen would do. Marcus Allen offers no evidence whatsoever that the specially formulated film made by Eastman Kodak would evaporate in a vacuum. So we can put a line through anything Marcus Allen says about evaporating film, the cameras wouldn't work, etc., etc. NASA modified the Hasselblad cameras. NASA contracted Kodak, Eastman Kodak, to specially formulate a film that would work under those conditions. And you've got Marcus Allen, a failed car salesman, failed photographer, telling us that it wouldn't work, the film would evaporate. Well, I think I'd sooner take the word of Eastman Kodak, Hasselblad, and NASA over Marcus Allen, personally. Okay, so just put a line through anything Marcus Allen's got to say about evaporating film. Offers absolutely no evidence whatsoever that that would be the case. Talking out of his wrinkly, pimply old backside as usual. Now, getting onto the spacesuit, and of course we have an expert opinion from a chef as to why the spacesuit would be why the spacesuit would not adequately protect the astronauts.
I cover this in, I think it was the last episode we did, actually, episode 3, and so he's kind of representing it here slightly. So I hope I do him justice. But I've also got a slight kind of appendum to that, which kind of ties it up quite nicely.
I can hardly wait.
So he said this is Neil Armstrong's suit as displayed by NASA as his complete kit. It says the suit flown in Apollo 11 for the claimed moon landings and has been on display for many years and has been restored and cleaned in an attempt to keep it from decay as a permanent record of a claimed event. So we'll probably see that in an auction soon then.
Obviously their language, claimed event.
The International Latex Corporation, they make bras, was contracted to make the suits. NASA's updated files claim that there's 21 layers of protection, and Scott says, but none are for radiation, however.
Being a chef, he would know. If it's got 21 layers of protection, the astronaut's going to be adequately protected. Remember, it's not designed to protect them from nuclear radiation. It's cosmic radiation on the lunar surface. So the astronauts are going to be adequately protected by the 21 layers. Otherwise it'd be 22 layers, wouldn't there? If it needed an extra layer, it would get an extra layer. Okay, well, let's just have a very quick look at ILC. I've got them up on the big screen. Will it focus on the big screen? Let's have a look. And if I hit this,
awarding a spacesuit contract to an underwear company isn't as crazy as it sounds. The Second World War had forced ILC to learn some new tricks.
During the war, all of the natural rubber and a lot of their materials were impounded for the war effort. And the only way they survived is they made escape suits and life rafts and life vests and things like this for the military.
ILC's experience with flexible rubber products gives them a big advantage over the competition.
All the space programs up until that point, which was Mercury, Gemini, the astronaut just sat in the capsule in a suit. It was hard to move. The suits were just, when they were full of air and pressurized so you could breathe and live, you couldn't hardly move. It was clear to everybody that you got to be able to walk. You got to have a walking moon suit.
ILC proposes to build a suit that solves the flexibility problem with something called a convolute.
It looks like the fabric part of an accordion. So it'll collapse and open and collapse and open. It's rubber on the inside, rubber on the outside, and fabric in the middle that keeps its shape under the pressure. And it's a very complex composite. And we had them on the knees, we had them on the wrist, we had them on the elbows, we had them on the thighs, had them on the shoulders.
The suit also has to protect the astronauts in wildly different conditions.
The moon's temperature swings from plus 250 to minus 250. So if you're out on a plane with the sun on you, it's 250 degrees. And then if you happen to get out of a crater where it's shielded, it can switch all the way to minus 250, and it moves pretty quick because there's no air there.
The pursuit of the perfect moon suit will lead ILC to pioneer new materials and techniques that no one thought possible.
Okay, sorry about that. I had to pause that because it's not easy trying to find the right bits of this, but this is just a little bit more on the suit.
The suit, the guy in the middle will pop up like a piece of toast because they were just too jammed in.
They try new designs and different materials, but 100 suits later, they're still not right.
A couple of the astronauts were doing some trial runs in a capsule, and one of the astronauts got out and said, "There's no way I'm going to go to the moon in this suit."
On the factory floor, project manager Homer Ream realizes the key to streamlining the suits is the helmet.
The helmets, up until that time, were copies of fighter pilot crash helmets. They fit real tight around your head like football helmet.
And if this was all faked, they wouldn't have bothered going beyond that, because, you know, people would expect astronauts maybe to look like fighter pilots in their pressurized suits and with their tight-fitting helmets. Why would they go beyond that if it wasn't all real?
You had to be able to move your head, so you had to have a neck joint. And all that infringing on the mobility of your shoulder.
Oh, good.
A major breakthrough.
A guy at NASA had been experimenting with a bubble helmet. Just set the bubble on your suit like this, fixed, and then your head's open, you're moving around inside the bubble. Eliminates a neck joint. You don't need a neck joint.
The bubble is the final helmet innovation. It allows ILC to taper and streamline their suit. Then they turn to the gloves.
The whole reason that you're going to use a spacesuit is to go out and work in space.
Okay, now I'm going to pause it again and just move on to another bit with regard to spacesuits. Okay, just a continuation of the spacesuit.
We have nowadays like Vectrans and Kevlars and very high tensile material. So we ended up using Chrome LR. It was a tightly woven chromium steel material. Back in those days, a yard of that material cost $3,000. And when you think about that in today's dollar, it was a lot of money.
After a lot of trial and error, ILC finds the right combination of materials, and their assembly line is cranking out a new suit every 3 weeks.
Yeah, okay. So, with regard to the spacesuit, it's a real spacesuit. It was designed for going to the moon. After the Apollo 1 fire, they had to completely redesign it and use different materials because it then had to be fireproof. They wouldn't go through all this if it was all fake. You know, they weren't going to be sending... They're not going to be putting people in that are going to be walking around on the moon. They wouldn't give a damn whether it burnt or not. They wouldn't give a damn if the helmet restricted movement. You know, they would have just made a suit that looks the part. They would have worn the fighter pilot helmet, tight-fitting helmet. That would have been it. You know, this is real engineering going into a real spacesuit that was used on real moon missions. So put a line through anything Scott Henderson, a bloody chef, has to say about spacesuits. Similarly with the rest of this panel, none of them know anything about this stuff. Their opinion with regard to any of this is completely worthless. Okay, let's continue. Okay, more pearls of wisdom for our experts here. They're still talking about the radiation exposure.
Which satellite was it? It was CREST. The CREST satellite detected this enormous flare. One of the things that solar flares can do is they can actually over-replenish the Van Allen radiation belts, and in fact, sometimes it will create a third radiation belt or even plug up the gap between the two belts. The Cresta flare, the Cresta satellite detected this massive influx to the Van Allen belts. This was in 1991, I believe, if I recall.
Again, nothing whatsoever to do with the Apollo lunar missions, 1991. Not 1969, is it?
Correctly. And I remember
assuming he's correct, of course.
Distinctly what was reported. They said that this particular region hasn't been well patrolled or measured since the 60s.
Since they measured it for the Apollo missions in the 60s.
Which just goes to show, that they just assume that we'll go whatever the AP8 max data says, it must be true. And now there's actually correction factors that people can use to try to account for any shortcomings these models have.
So I mean, the big giveaway for me is that Apollo 8 was the first mission that went outside the magnetosphere. Now, if you look at the voice transcript, you would have expected them to make some comment. How are you feeling, guys? What's your radiation level? There's no mention of this at all. Now, surely for the first time that man went out through the Van Allen belts, then they would have mentioned it and asked them how they were feeling. Presumably, they could have turned them back if the radiation was too excessive.
Well, Marcus and I discussed this, actually.
Borman actually, I was just going to say, Borman actually claims in his book Countdown that I look at my dosimeter on the way out there, it's minuscule, it's okay. That's what he claims in his book. And in fact, when Borman, he actually got motion sickness, he started chugging up, and Van Allen, he was actually mortified. He thought that he was dying from the radiation exposure.
Okay, well, let's just assume that what Mr. White here is saying is true and that Van Allen was mortified. That's because he would have thought that he must have been wrong, because all of his calculations and measurements have said that it's not a problem. So that's why he would have been mortified. Remember, Professor Van Allen, the guy that had the belts named after him, said, "Not a significant problem. It's not a problem that can't be overcome. It's not a significant problem because of the time they're going to spend in the radiation, the Van Allen radiation belts, the speed they'll be travelling, because they travel around the edge of the Van Allen belts rather than right through the middle of it. They're travelling at a high velocity, so the exposure is minimalised. It's certainly not a significant risk compared with the other risks they undertake on the mission." I think were his actual words. I might even try and find that email again just to show you what Van Allen had to say himself about it. Now, whose word do you think you should be taking more seriously? These guys? Or Professor Van Allen, who had the Van Allen radiation belts named after him? Now, this Trevor Weaver guy that I'd never ever heard of has just said that he read the Apollo 8 transcript, the transcript from the Apollo 8 mission, and there's no mention of radiation levels. I think that's what he said, isn't it? Let's just check that again. Let's go back to this guy.
Mention of this at all. Now, surely for the first time that man went
since the 60s, which just goes to show, that they just assume that we'll go whatever the AP8 max data says, it must be true.
Sorry about this. It's difficult to get these. I don't want to spend heaps of time on this video. I just want to give you the gist of how ridiculous these statements are.
And now there's actually correction factors that people can use to try to account for any shortcomings these models have.
So I mean, the big giveaway for me is that Apollo 8 was the first mission that went outside the magnetosphere. Now, if you look at the voice transcript, you would have expected them to make some comment. How are you feeling, guys? What's your radiation level? There's no mention of this at all. Now,
okay, well, let's have a look at the Apollo 8 transcript and see what we can find. No, it's not that one. This is talking about the Oh, this is something I was going to use earlier but didn't bother, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. Nearly 100,000 photographs taken by NASA's lunar probes, Ranger, Surveyor, Lunar Orbiter, help map Apollo's landing sites. Yeah, I'm going off at a bit of a tangent here, but I'll leave a link to this document. This is a NASA document. It's not from Nexus. And it explains about contracting Eastman Kodak to make a special film. It also talks about modifying the cameras. Now, it must be this one here. Okay. So this... this again is from NASA. It's Apollo 8 Flight Journal. And here we have down here. Remember this, Trevor Weaver said in the Apollo, if you read the Apollo 8 transcript, there is no mention of the radiation levels at all. But here we have 0301243 Borman. Mike, PRD readings for the CDR, that's the commander, 4. For the CMP, that's the command module pilot, is 0.64, and for the LMP, that's the lunar module pilot, is 0.25. Now, PRD readings, personal radiation dosimeter, PRD. So there you go, there is Borman talking about his PRD, talking about the PRD readings for the crew, and there are the figures. And these are, this is, he's on the way back here, I think. This is, what, 30 hours and 12 minutes into the mission. That's all the radiation they've accumulated in those 30 hours and 12 minutes. Maybe Trevor Weaver doesn't know what PRD is. Maybe he's just a very poor investigative journalist, if that's what he considers himself to be. Regardless, he said, take a look at the Apollo 8 transcript. There is no mention at all of radiation dosage. And there it is. And I'll leave a link to this so you can look at it yourself. I haven't looked at the rest of it, but as I said, I didn't want to spend a great deal of time on this. I don't know whether it's mentioned more than once, but this guy said it's not mentioned at all, so I thought I'd show you there it being mentioned. So, sorry Mr. Weaver. You too are talking out of your pimply backside. There's Colin's response. Good, I copy, and he's repeated the figures back to him. That's the transcript from Apollo 8. Okay, let's see what else we can find from these luminaries. Okay, just a final thing on the radiation. Remember, these guys are clueless. Put a line through anything they have to say about the spacesuits not being suitable to protect the astronauts, and anything about huge radiation doses frying the astronauts. Now this is from CosmoQuest forum, and I'll leave a link to this below as well. And this is an email from Professor Van Allen about his radiation belts. Someone's asked him about there we go. My question to you, this is to Van Allen. Professor Van Allen, is this: I've read that you have denounced the conspiracy theorist claims that the radiation in the Van Allen belts would have killed the astronauts. So here's Van Allen's response to Mr. Lambert. I'll reply to your email. I send you, I'm reading this through the viewfinder, so apologies. I send you the following copy of a response that I wrote to another inquiry about 2 months ago. The radiation belts of the Earth do indeed pose important constraints on the safety of human space flight. The very energetic tens to hundreds of MeV protons in the inner radiation belt are the most dangerous and most difficult to shield against. Specifically, prolonged flights, i.e. ones of many months duration, of human or other Animals in orbits about the Earth must be conducted at altitudes less than about 250 miles in order to avoid significant radiation exposure. A person in the cabin of a space shuttle in a circular equatorial orbit in the most intense region of the inner radiation belt at an altitude of about 1,000 miles would be subjected to a fatal dosage of radiation in about 1 week. However, the outbound and inbound trajectories of the Apollo spacecraft cut through the outer portions of the inner belt, and because of their high speed, spent only about 15 minutes in traversing the region and less than 2 hours in traversing the much less penetrating radiation in the outer radiation belt. The resulting radiation exposure for the round trip was less than 1% of a fatal dosage, a very minor risk among the far greater other risks of such flights. I made such estimates in the early 1960s and so informed NASA engineers who were planning the Apollo flights. These estimates are still reliable. The recent Fox TV show, which I saw, is an ingenious and entertaining assemblage of nonsense, as is the Apollo Detectives series of videos. The claim that radiation exposure during the Apollo missions would have been fatal to the astronauts is only one example of such nonsense. There you go. So that's from Van Allen himself. They know the inner radiation belt contains the more energetic particles, and it gets less and less energetic the further you get out. If you actually look at the trajectory for the Apollo spacecraft, they go up through one edge of the inner belt, and they don't plough right through the middle of the most energetic region, which is the impression that Mr. White gives. That's the calculation that Mr. White shows. He shows a calculation for a naked astronaut travelling in a straight line from the surface of the Earth out through the most intense region of the Van Allen belts. All right, well, let's see what else we can find. And just to finish off, this is a NASA article. This is about the Van Allen belts, talking about James Van Allen discovered the collection of high-energy particle clouds within 40,000 kilometres of the Earth. So there you go. That's I mean, how many kilometres is it to the Moon? And if you look at this, there's the black bar is showing the trajectory of the Apollo vehicles. There's the most intense region there. They just skirt that, and they go out through here and up through here. And I don't know if you can see it, but there are different colours in here for the most intense areas, regions where the particles are of most intense activity. So you got there and there. They go out through the edge there and up through the edge there, and they're travelling at such a velocity that they don't spend enough time in here to receive much of a dose, as indicated by Borman's personal radiation dosiometer readings that he read to Collins back at Capcom. If you care to read the Apollo 8 transcript, which I'll also leave a link to. All right, you can probably tell I'm losing the will to live here with these guys, but I'll press on. So, having put the spacesuit behind us, and the Van Allen radiation belts behind us, we've dismissed any comments they've made about those as being nonsense, of course. They showed James Burke getting in and out of a spacesuit. Well, James Burke didn't go to the moon, did he? You know, how do we know that was the complete suit, etc., etc.? Has Scott Henderson provided evidence that solar radiation and cosmic radiation won't penetrate the individual 21 layers? Each of those individual 21 layers, has Scott Henderson checked each one of those 21 layers to see how far, how transparent they are to solar and cosmic radiation. So, you know, layer 1, we'll bombard it with the appropriate level of solar and cosmic radiation, layer 2 all the way through to 21, and tested it for penetration? Or is it just the opinion of a chef? And he said the gloves don't look like they're connected to the suit. The man is an idiot. Put a line through Scott Henderson. Okay, now we're getting to the bit where the franking is going on. Thank goodness there's not a misprint in that one.
The seal has to be perfect.
And now we're talking of seals. This is just a quick thing about. I don't know if you can hear a little bit of that at all. Can you hear that at all?
No.
Okay. I'll probably have to abandon our sounds on the moon. This is him doing a stamp on the moon. And he's actually franking a postcard. And there it is. And you see him pull it off.
Okay, so he's franking a postcard on the moon. Mm-hmm.
There. He pulled it off. It sort of had caused a suction as he pulled that stamp off. Which suggests to me thinking, how can you get a suction as you're pulling an ink stamp off a frank letter?
Oh, God. Oh, dear. Well, it's probably the adhesive on the stamp, isn't it? It's got nothing to do with suction. It's got more to do with adhesion. You know, stick a stamp on something, then try peeling it off. I don't know. Clueless doesn't even come close, does it, really?
Because there'd be nowhere to cause that suction. But that's what it looked like.
And how come the ink hasn't evaporated in the vacuum of space?
Yeah.
Probably because it's not a liquid.
They claim it's a special stamp designed for the moon, but they don't exactly explain the technical know-hows of what it is and why that is, you know, what makes it a special moon stamp.
You think some space geek would have wanted to know, because they may want to put a bottle of that ink, you know, if I was... They want to write letters to their friend and said...
Yeah, only $300,000 a bottle. Okay. Oh, God. I'm getting really weary of this bloody rubbish. I'll see what I can do. I'll see if I can make it to the end, but I'm going to skip through a lot of this. I think it's just nonsense. This is another old favourite of the conspiracy theorists. The sound that you can hear on the NASA recordings, on the Apollo NASA recordings, and they showed some clips there of some modern day astronauts saying, "Well, you can't hear anything," but when you actually consider that they're different suits, of course, the materials are different, the way they're put together is different, and the fact that the Apollo the mics were on the Apollo mission all the time. There's a microphone continually running in the lunar module. If you listen to the modern stuff, the stuff they give as an example, you can tell that the mic is on, the mic is off. When the mic is off, it's stony silent. When the mic is on, you can hear them. What they don't do is operate any tools with the microphone on. And I suspect that if they did that, you may very well hear vibration from a tool going through the either the structure of the suit or the arm of the astronaut. It's an interesting one, but I don't think that's convincing at all. I think you know, if you're banging a stake into the ground, then it's quite possible that the sound, the energy produced by the impacts of the hammer on the stake would produce enough of a banging effect on the suit or on the hand to produce that sound through an open mic. The other thing too is that if you listen to the original recordings, these sounds are very quiet. You've really got to boost the sound to hear the sounds that you're hearing here. So if the microphone's running in the LEM, you're going to hear something. If you throw something and it hits the LEM, you're going to hear it go thump. No anomaly there. And you can tell that the sound is really boosted to be able to hear that at all.
So what you just saw appears to be a smoking gun. That scene, which was broadcast live...
No, I don't think that's a smoking gun, to be perfectly honest. No, I think there's that explanation is a pretty good one. You know, there's a microphone in the LEM that's running all the time. And you throw... you've probably heard this. You've probably heard the expression microphonic. You know, you can have a microphone attached to a structure, and you can tap the structure, and you'll hear it on the microphone. If the microphone's attached to the structure, and you bang the structure, the vibration will go through the structure to the microphone. So, yeah, I don't see that as a smoking gun at all, personally.
To the world during Apollo 15 shows astronaut James Irwin. He takes this cord or band.
I mean, if you could hear them going scrunch, scrunch, scrunch as they walked along, you know, scuffing the spacesuits on the lunar rover, yeah, maybe. But no, I don't think any of this sort of thing is at all convincing that this is not done on the moon. All right, well, let's just move on to the next bit. Okay, let's see what they've got to say about it.
The old business, I mean, NASA say that it was transmitted through their fingers, their arms, their body, to the atmosphere inside the bubble helmet and hence to the microphone. And that is debatable. I mean, it could be true, it could not be true. But the key thing about this is that...
That's what they say. I would say that's likely to be true. I mean, you could probably try that with yourself with a diving suit, couldn't you? Just get in a diving suit, one of the old-fashioned type, screw the helmet on, pressurise it, and then hit something and see if you can hear anything.
What Jet Winter found when they threw the metal band, I can't remember who it was, and threw it. Was it Scott? Anyway, I threw the metal band and it hit the lunar module and made a sound. Now, nobody's touching it. There's no connection with their microphones. I mean, that is the giveaway for me. The rest of it, I think, is a bit debatable.
Yeah, okay. So he thinks the other part of it is debatable. I think that's a fair comment. I honestly don't believe that NASA faked that. So, you know, if you can hear, as I say, the sound was boosted. If you can hear it, then there'll be a good reason why you can hear it. There'll be that mechanical force is going to be transferred into the atmosphere of the suit somehow and get into the microphone. But what this chap is missing is that the lunar modules have a recording system in them that runs a lot of the time. And if you've got a microphone operating, you know, an open channel microphone operating in a vacuum, and that microphone is connected to a structure, and you bang that structure, the mechanical force of you banging the structure will be transferred to the microphone, and that will cause the diaphragm to move, and it will produce a sound, whether there's air in there or not. So there is an explanation for that one. And I mentioned it in the previous clip. You can have people may complain that you know, sometimes things are microphonic. You know, you can tap it and you can hear it on the microphone if you're doing a recording of something. So it's just a mechanical force transferred to a microphone diaphragm through the structure of the vehicle. No air required on that one. Okay, next. Oh, okay, then let's just hear what Marcus Allen has to say. Always good for a laugh, is Mr. Allen.
It's a very strange story that NASA tells on this. The only spacesuit that operates like a drum is on the moon.
Okay. So you wouldn't expect NASA to advance spacesuit technology in 50 years then, Mr. Allen? He still thinks they're making they're still making the same spacesuits back in today that they were making back in 1969. The other thing too is, of course, they were made for walking on the moon. Spacesuits are made for working in space. They are different, and the ILC Dover guy said that. He said, you know, they had to think about how to make a suit for walking around and working on the moon. So there are differences, but the materials are going to be different. The way they're going to be made these days is going to be different. And if you look at the modern astronauts working on the ISS, you can tell when the mic's open and you can tell when the mic's closed. And they use the tools when the mic's closed. And I didn't see a clip where they're using a tool when the microphone is open. So I'd like to see that before I made statements like that, Mr. Allen. Okay, let's move on. I should have let that run on a bit.
Illustration, I think you've got it in your book, Trevor. The same illustration showing them hammering the tube into the lunar surface. They use that illustration on the NASA website to explain to kids how there's no sound in space.
Yeah.
And guess
yeah, well, it's probably the sound is probably not obvious. As I said, you really have to wring the neck out of the audio gain to actually hear those sounds. The way it seems on the video is that it's quite a loud sound, but on the original recording, you've really got to wind that audio gain up to hear it. So they just might not have heard it. Yeah, I don't think you know. Obviously, these people are jumping up and down with glee, but yeah, I don't think that's at all significant.
2 years later, they took it down. But they haven't taken it all way back machine either, have they? So it was found again. So NASA have been caught yet again with their pants around their ankles with no sound.
Oh, look at Ben's face. He loves that. He loves it.
Yeah, that's
another
the thing
explanation
about
I've heard for.
is throwing the metal band into that seals it. You can argue forever about whether it happens with drum or not. Just don't know. But certainly when it's through the metal band and there's no connection with the astronauts, that for me is the giveaway.
Yep. And he just can't understand how that would work. So that's not a giveaway at all. That's just a demonstration of him not understanding mechanics and audio recording. Okay, next. Okay.
You know, one for Gus Grissom's lemon. Yeah, it's what they used. Apparently they used it. And they got to the moon and nothing went wrong.
6 times nothing went wrong.
Obviously they're forgetting about Apollo 13. And if you read the transcripts from the other Apollo missions, they did have things going wrong. Obviously, they weren't things that were bad enough to terminate the missions, but they had their share of problems. Yeah, okay.
I would like to discuss about the rocks and stuff. That's one of my presentations. Sure. As you know, that I recently completed my geology major, and yes, if I play my cards right, I should have finished my astrophysics minor at least. We'll get the results soon enough. Now, one of the things that recently popped up in the thing, let me just throw a screenshot. Let me get this up first of all. This computer still uses Windows 8.1, so I hope I have to get open this PDF up here.
Terminology used by Americans, major and minor. Don't really understand what that means, but still, there we go.
In Firefox, hang on. In Firefox. Let's
I'll move this on, I think. And even more. And even more. God. I think I've said it before, but I'm losing the will to live here.
Meteorites from Mars, meteorites from the asteroids. We even have a meteorite from Mercury. Yet we have no meteorites from Venus.
Well, they're not sure that meteorite is from Mercury, to be perfectly honest. But what you've got to bear in mind, of course, is you've got the sun in the middle of the solar system. There'll be times when the Earth, when the moon is between the Earth and the sun. You know, you're not going to. I think it's going to be highly unlikely you're going to get rocks coming from Venus or Mercury out away from the sun towards the Earth. Getting rocks knocked off of things and going in towards the sun, yeah, I can understand that, but not going the other way. And if they're finding, you know, bits of the moon and bits of Mars all over the Earth, I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect to find Earth rocks on the moon. I don't really see what's wrong with that. And apparently the scientists that analysed this rock and said it was actually, I think it was done in Australia. And he said this is actually an Earth rock, singular, Ben. He said yes, it probably been knocked off the Earth about 4 million years ago during a large asteroid impact. And of course there's more recent ones than that. There was the big one, what was it, 150 million years ago, that would have thrown up an awful lot of debris. It caused the nuclear winter type effect, and it killed all the dinosaurs and everything else. That would have been a significant enough impact, I would think, to throw some rocks up into space and be sucked in by the moon. So I think what our expert here has to say is next is twaddle.
Why do you think that is?
I'm not sure. I mean, I know that there are bits of things fly off in space on impacts. They sometimes land on other planets, but it's quite hard to find these things. In fact, it took them quite a long time to find moon rocks in Antarctica. But
well, that's not really what I'm talking about right now, stuff. I'm just explaining basically. It can't be.
Yeah, shut up and listen, Ben. Look at his face.
It can't be because it's so close to the sun, because we have at least one meteorite from Mercury, which is even closer to the sun, and therefore that meteorite would have a much difficult time escaping the sun's gravity well, and we've got one of those. It can't be because of the atmosphere, because the atmosphere of Venus is very dense, but the pressures that would have been created during meteorite impacts would have been much...
All completely irrelevant, of course, nothing whatsoever to do with NASA faking the moon landings.
Greater than the atmospheric pressure.
Who cares if rocks can get to the moon from Venus?
From Venus. Maybe it's because Venus is almost the exact same size as the Earth, and therefore has almost the exact same gravity as the Earth. You know, so you know, if they took a space shuttle to launch off the Earth, it will take a space shuttle to launch off Venus, right? So now they're telling us that we.
Well, it will take a space shuttle to launch X amount of tons off of Venus.
You can have rocks from the Earth landing on the moon and being collected by the astronauts. I'm telling you, that's a scientific impossibility.
I really don't think so. Yeah, okay. So you got this guy who's just got his geology degree. Presumably that's what he means by he's just got his geology major. A bit non-specific there. I wonder if that's what he's talking about. But you got the PhD scientist, the geologist, that looked at it and said it's probably knocked off of the Earth for a few million years ago. And I've just said, you know, there's a massive impact 150 million years ago that killed all the dinosaurs. That would have thrown dust and debris out for goodness knows how far. So yeah, finding a rock from Earth on the moon, I don't think that's unlikely at all. Certainly we find moon rocks here, don't we? So scientific impossibility, in my opinion, rubbish.
I see. So if that was the case, then we have rocks from Venus on Earth.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
No, completely irrelevant nonsense. I mean, how far is Venus from the moon? How far is Venus from the Earth? How far is the moon from the Earth? Did this guy just say got his qualification in origami?
Because it is true. I mean, Venus, Earth is the biggest of the inner planets, but Venus, I think, is only 2% smaller. It's slightly smaller, but it's only about 1 or 2%.
Completely irrelevant. Okay, let's just move this on. Perhaps there is a god. This appears to be winding up. There's been quite a lot of talk about moon rocks not being from the moon. You know, NASA's going to send out moon rocks for people to analyse. Marcus Allen said, "Oh, they're only like grains of sand." And then Ben said, "Well, actually, the ones I've seen are about an inch cube." And Marcus Allen didn't say anything. NASA's moon rocks are from the moon. Okay, they send them out to people that can tell if they're from the moon or not. You got this guy that's got the ink's still wet on his qualification for geology, saying they're all talking rubbish. And I strongly suspect that it's this guy that's talking the rubbish. There'd be so many PhDs out there jumping up and down saying these rocks are not from the moon. What have you sent us? It's all, you're conning us. That doesn't happen, does it? And Ben says, oh, well, no one would like to upset the apple cart, effectively. And as usual, he's talking out of his backside. There's a lot of people out there that will be more than happy to show NASA up as being a bunch of fraudsters, if that was the case. It isn't the case. So there we go. Now this fella here is going to he was talking about astronauts on wires. He didn't show the clip, of course, so I can't really comment on that. I have seen clips where they say the astronauts are suspended on wires, and they're not, of course. They're moving around in 16G. So these guys don't provide any evidence whatsoever. They chat amongst themselves, basically, in front of the camera. They're probably saying stuff to please the audience. We know how much Ben loves the camera, but they're not offering any evidence. When they talk about something, they don't show anything to back that up. I can't comment on the video with the astronaut on the wires. They don't show it. But thank goodness this is coming to an end. I mean, it's very, very debilitating drivel, this.
Everything, but please do check it out. It's very interesting. It has a lot of things on there. And again, look at both sides of the controversy. That's what I always say. And
yeah, something you never ever do you, Ben? You can be shown 1,000,000 times evidence, good evidence that it's all real, that it all happened, and you still find some stupid bloody. You say, oh yeah, well, the reflector on the moon could have been left there by a TR-3B, Dear. Some ridiculous theory as to what actually happened. It could be anything other than what actually happened with these people.
Now, Trevor, I know we've already talked about what you're going to be doing, your book launch. How's you got any plans for that? Are you going to be camping outside NASA's headquarters with the first copy of the press?
They should get a complimentary copy.
Yeah, these books.
Yeah, they'd poke a hole in the corner and hang it up in the Kazi. That's what I'd do with it.
With a website. For example, this one is 9,000 hours of video on the website, plus about 2,000 documents, and the same for the new book. So there's a website, so as you go through, you're actually directed to a particular chapter and appendix number.
Could you show us the book, the new book, Trevor, again? Could you show us the new book clearly? Just hold it in vision for a bit so we can all see it, and it's called Apollo Moon Hoax by Trevor Weaver.
This is an exclusive, ladies and gentlemen. You're seeing the cover of the book.
Just so that people, if they're interested, they can see the cover.
Yeah, I mean, basically...
A generation deceived by NASA? Well, no, I think it's a handful of people deceived by half-wits like these, to be perfectly honest. It's nonsense. Absolute rubbish.
It's a generation deceived by NASA.
Uh-huh.
What annoys me, this is being taught in schools now as real history.
Yeah, that's right, because it is real history. This bloody rubbish should not be taught in schools. This shouldn't even be published. Yeah, I don't know. It's offensive rubbish.
And I think, I think Marcus said this, and I make a quote from Marcus in the book.
Actually, I might have a look at this guy's website to see what sort of ludicrous nonsense he's got on there. He didn't understand the microphonic sound. He said that he'd read the Apollo 8 transcript and there was no mention of the radiation dose, and there was. He seems to have very little idea about the Van Allen radiation belts, as do the others.
It just diminishes real technology, real achievement, if you do that. Yeah. But I don't blame the teachers, because they probably believe it.
Yeah, exactly. How exactly does this diminish modern technology? You can look up all of the technology used in the NASA missions, and you can compare it with today's technology. Today's technology hasn't been stunted because people were conned into thinking we went to the moon. That's drivel. Nonsense.
They just repeat us, as David Icke says, you know, they just repeat
David Icke, Jesus Christ.
what they're told. And as we said,
the Queen's a lizard. Prince Philip's a lizard.
As Jarrah has demonstrated, geologists do the same thing. It's very, very, sometimes I find demoralising, quite frankly. But
I had one incident once in which, this was actually during a geology excursion. We were measuring...
Yes, a large hole has been found in the ground and Jarrah White is looking into it.
Basically doing gravity surveys. We had a gravitometer. We went off campus. We went in separate cars, and one of the classmates was riding with the teacher. She actually mentioned that I was a moon landing doubter, and apparently this teacher, he had actually co-authored papers with Harrison Schmidt, the astronaut geologist. Oh dear! So basically, and literally, we arrived at the site. First thing he says to me, he says, "So you don't like the moon landings, Jarrah?" And I said, I said, oh my God, she must have mentioned them. And I said, it's not that I don't like them, I just don't believe they happened. And I kid you not, literally the whole field trip was just me and him arguing back and forth about the rocks he was citing. I was citing the papers, he was trying to shoot down what I said, and I was counting with all the other papers I cited. He mentioned, we have meteorites that are from...
I'd have thrown him off the bloody course, personally. Yeah, there's no room. There's no room in academia for people that doubt this sort of thing. That's for sure. Doubt the reality of the Apollo missions.
So are these the same meteorites that we think were HED meteorites?
Yeah, as soon as somebody says to me that they doubt these missions are real, that they think it's all a con, it was all faked, I immediately write that person off as being as dumb as a box of hammers. And I think, if I had Jarrah in my class, I'd give him a pointy hat with a big D on it, personally.
He said, well, was that before we had the rocks? And I said, no, after we had the rocks. And I was naming the meteorite numbers and everything. That's honestly, no joke. As soon as we stopped the device, to let it take its measurement.
Anyway, I'll see if there's any more that's worth looking at. How far have we got to go? Oh God, 2:45, 15 minutes. Let's see if I can compress that into 2 or 3 and get this steaming pile put to bed. Well, mercifully, there was nothing else worth commenting on. I spoke about the wet flag, and I think Neil Peel or the other chap, was it Andy Chapman, was talking about getting a flag. I said I might do the same sort of thing myself. Ben didn't chirp up and say, hey, I don't think it's a wet flag, like he's done on one of his previous response videos to me. I wonder why that was. But what I'd say to him is, call the company called Anin. They make the flags. They made all the flags for the Apollo missions in America, and get the right flag. If you're going to do that, I might do a similar experiment myself. And they show the cover of the latest Nexus magazine with an alien on there and the UFO cover-up of the century or whatever it was. But certainly no such thing. That's the best they can do to draw people in. Well, it's absolute nonsense. And the thing is, they know it's nonsense, yet they still push that as a lead story. UFO leak of the century, and it's no such thing. Okay, well, I'll leave. This is actually a view from my lounge window, sunset view from my lounge window in winter, which I thought was quite nice. I'll leave you with a final word from Professor Lisa Harvey Smith. Finally. Okay, well, I'll just finish off with this clip, I think, which pretty much says it all.
But here's where our story takes a bizarre turn. As amazing as the mission had been, it seems not everyone was going along for the ride. Conspiracy theories about the moon landing still exist 50 years later.
NASA did have models and mock-ups of the moon for training purposes. They shot it in an Hollywood studio, jumped around, drove a lunar lander around sand, and then just cut it by half the speed. You take the actual footage from the moon landing, you do double speed. Really very interesting. Look into it. The flag waving in the wind. Now take a look at the astronauts proudly planting the American flag on the moon as it gracefully waves in the wind. There's just one problem with this. There's no wind on the moon, Einstein.
Not only do we have thousands of hours of footage from the moon, from the Apollo missions, we have 380 kilos of rocks that were collected during those missions. We have close-up.
Yes, we have close-up pictures. We have 380 kilos of rocks that were collected from those missions. This is Professor Lisa Harvey-Smith, a professional astrophysicist. She's not a self-employed dog walker. She's not a self-employed gardener. She's not a failed photographer, failed car salesman, or a bloody chef. And because she's a professional astrophysicist, her IQ is significantly bigger than her shoe size. So she doesn't believe the Queen of England is a shape-shifting lizard from another star system. And I reckon that I think Lisa Harvey-Smith here sums it up as well as it could ever be summed up.
Photographs from recent space missions showing the landing sites with the actual footprints of the astronauts on the ground. It happened, guys. Get over it.
There were 6 more.
There we go. It happened, guys. Get over it. Well, if you've struggled all the way through this video to this point, many thanks. I hope you got some enjoyment out of it, maybe a bit of a giggle out of it, and maybe I'll catch you again.